All right, let's talk about the world before 1450. When you picture it, what do you see? For a lot of us, Africa might be kind of a blank space on that mental map. Well, in this explainer, we're going to change that. We're going to fill in that map, and trust me, it's packed with incredible, innovative, and diverse states that were absolutely flourishing.
So, let's ask that big question right up front. What did Africa actually look like before 1450? Look, if you're picturing a bunch of isolated villages, just toss that idea out the window. The reality? It was this dynamic, vibrant tapestry of powerful kingdoms, sprawling trade networks. Honestly, it was way more complex and interconnected than what we usually hear about. Okay, so the story of this whole era is really driven by two massive, and I mean massive, forces. You've got one growing organically from inside Africa itself, and another one connecting the continent to pretty much the entire known world.
So, on the inside, you have the Bantu migrations, which took place over centuries. Think of it as a slow, steady wave spreading all this vital knowledge about farming and, crucially, how to govern. Then, at the same time, you have the spread of Islam coming from the outside. This didn't just bring a new faith, it plugged African states into this huge global network of trade and culture. And when you mix that powerful internal growth with that massive external connection, well, that's the perfect recipe for brand new, powerful states to pop up. And a lot of the time, this whole process of building a government happens super organically. It's not like someone just showed up with a blueprint. It started small, right? You've got families and clans just kind of governing themselves. But then, as they grow into villages, you need someone to manage things, so a chief emerges. And as the population keeps growing, well, those chiefs would team up, form councils, and tackle bigger regional problems together. It's a classic bottoms-up way of building a state. A really fantastic example of this is the Hausa Kingdom. See, they didn't have one big central government calling all the shots. Instead, it was this really clever network of specialized city-states, all loosely connected by family ties. So you may have one city that's all about making textiles, while another one is the agricultural powerhouse. It was just a super efficient, decentralized system that was built on everybody cooperating, not on one group conquering another. All right, let's shift gears and head over to West Africa, because this is where state building went to a whole other level. We're talking legendary scale. And the crazy part? Entire empires were built on two things that sound simple, but were unbelievably valuable: gold and salt. The first major player on the scene was the Empire of Ghana. For centuries, they basically controlled the trans-Saharan trade, trading their mountains of gold for something just as precious: salt. But, empires rise and fall. As Ghana started to weaken, a new, even more powerful empire rose right from its ashes: the Great Empire of Mali. And Mali, wow, they didn't just pick up where Ghana left off with the gold trade, they totally perfected it. Their founder, a leader named Sundiata, was brilliant. He used his connections with merchants in North Africa to turn Mali into a straight-up commercial superpower. And all that incredible wealth, it didn't just pay for armies, it built legendary cities like Timbuktu. And Timbuktu became this world-famous center for Islamic scholarship with massive libraries and universities. Just amazing. Okay, let's take a journey clear across the continent now, over to East Africa. Here, we find kingdoms built on totally different foundations. We're not talking about desert trade anymore, we're talking about ocean trade. And it's not just about gold, it's about stone and faith. First up, let's talk about the incredible Kingdom of Zimbabwe. The genius of this place was all about location, location, location. They controlled and taxed the gold moving from the interior of the continent out to the coast. By doing that, they turned themselves into this vital hub that connected Africa to the massive Indian Ocean trade network. We're talking links to the Middle East, to India, and even further. The kingdom's name actually tells you a lot of the story. Zimbabwe is a Bantu word that means dwelling. But listen, these were not just any old dwellings. By building with stone, they were making a huge statement. It was a declaration of wealth, of permanence. It was a way of saying, we are here to stay and we are breaking from tradition. And the scale of what they built, it's just staggering. The massive stone wall around the capital, Great Zimbabwe, get this, it was 30 feet high and 15 feet thick. And they built the whole thing without any mortar to hold the stones together. I mean, this wasn't just a wall. It was an absolute monumental feat of engineering, designed to shout power and to last for centuries. Now, not too far away, there was another major power, but this one was defined by something different, not by trade, but by faith.
For centuries, the Kingdom of Ethiopia was this powerful, unshakable beacon of Christianity in Africa.
But here's the thing. This wasn't the same Christianity you'd find in Europe. Because it developed in relative isolation, the Ethiopian faith became something totally unique. Instead of building churches up, they famously carved 11 massive churches down directly out of solid rock. And they blended Christian theology with their own traditional beliefs, like honoring ancestors. The result was this spiritual identity that was completely and deeply their own.
So we've looked at these incredible kingdoms and empires, right? But what was it like for the average person? What about their day-to-day lives? Let's zoom in a bit and look at the social fabric that held these communities together all across sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah, away from all the thrones and empires, daily life was often organized by this really elegant social structure. You can think of it as being built on three main pillars. First, your kinship, that decided which clan you belonged to. Second, your age, that determined what kind of work you did. And third, your gender, which often laid out your specific roles and contributions. It was a really clear system where pretty much everyone knew their place and their purpose in the community.
Now, it's also absolutely crucial to understand that slavery was an established institution in many parts of Africa during this time, and this is long before the transatlantic slave trade began. People could be enslaved for a bunch of different reasons. Maybe they were prisoners of war, or they had a debt they couldn't pay, or it was punishment for a crime. In fact, a person's social status was often tied directly to how many enslaved people they owned.
And a huge driver of this was the Indian Ocean slave trade. This system transported countless East Africans, who were known in Arabic as the Zanj, all the way to the Middle East. Many of them were forced into just brutal labor on sugar plantations, and those horrific conditions set the stage for one of the biggest uprisings in history. And yeah, those brutal conditions sparked something incredible, one of the most stunning rebellions in world history. The Zanj didn't just try to escape, they rose up and waged war. They actually captured the major city of Basra. And this is the amazing part. They held it for a full decade. Now, they were eventually defeated, but the sheer scale and success of the Zanj rebellion sent absolute shockwaves across the entire region. So you might be wondering, how do we even know all of this? Well, in a lot of these societies, history wasn't something you'd find in a book. It wasn't written down. It was spoken, it was sung, it was performed. You see, here, culture was a living, breathing thing. Music was a way to connect with the spirit world. Sculptures and art were made to honor the ancestors. But the most important piece of the puzzle, oral storytelling. It was the vehicle for everything. It was the library, the history book, the family tree, all rolled into one. And at the very heart of this tradition, you have the griots and griots. Now, it's so important not to think of them as just simple entertainers. These storytellers, both men and women, were literally the living libraries of their communities. They were the ones who held the family histories, the epic poems, the laws. I mean, they were the guardians of their society's entire memory. There's a powerful saying that just captures their importance perfectly. When a griot died, it was as if a library burned. Wow. That one sentence, it really tells you everything you need to know about how absolutely vital these people were. So when we look back, from the clever city-states of the Hausa to the golden empire of Mali to the incredible stone fortresses of Zimbabwe, it's clear that Africa before 1450 was a continent buzzing with immense diversity, innovation, and connection. So that leaves us with one final question to think about. How does knowing all of this rich, complex history, change our view of the world before 1450?